It was Christmas Eve, and the old Victorian house stood silent against the cold winter night. A fresh blanket of snow glittered under the moonlight, covering the dormant grass and trees. Inside, the halls were quiet and still, the only sound the occasional creak of floorboards as the house settled. Upstairs, little Timmy lay wide awake in his bed, too excited to sleep. Christmas was his favorite time of year. He loved the twinkling lights, the festive decorations, the mounds of presents nestled under the tree. His family always made such a big deal out of the holiday, with his mother baking cookies for weeks and his father hauling box after box of ornaments up from the basement. Even his older sister, Sally, caught the Christmas spirit, her normally sullen mood lifting as Christmas drew near. As Timmy stared at the darkened ceiling, he thought he heard a noise coming from downstairs. It was faint at first, just a thump and a scrape, but it steadily grew louder. Thump, scrape. Thump, scrape. Soon he could hear voices too, low and indistinct. Were his parents putting out presents? Maybe they would let him sneak a peek. Timmy slipped out from under his covers and tiptoed to his bedroom door. He pressed his ear against the cool wood but couldn't make out any words. Emboldened, he slowly turned the knob and peeked out into the hall. The lights were all off. The inky darkness broken only by moonlight streaming in through a far window. Thump, scrape. The noises were definitely coming from the living room downstairs. But Timmy didn't recognize those voices drifting up to him. They seemed angry. He crept along the wall until he reached the top of the stairs. Crouching down, he peered between the balusters. His breath caught in his throat. There were people in the living room, but they weren't his parents. Timmy counted 4 of them, large men carrying flashlights that raked threateningly across the Christmas tree in unopened presents. The beautiful decorations his family had so painstakingly hung were strewn across the floor, broken and torn. One man tipped over the tree entirely with a crash. Fear flooded Timmy's body as he watched the scene unfold. He could now see that the men held tools, crowbars, hammers, screwdrivers. Were they robbers? What if his parents surprised them down there? Heart pounding wildly, Timmy stood to race back to his parents' bedroom and wake them. A floorboard squeaked under his slight weight. Timmy froze. The noises from below abruptly ceased. Heavy footsteps crossed the living room and a flashlight beam illuminated the bottom of the stairs. "Who's up there?" A harsh voice called. Timmy turned and fled down the hallway as fast as his small legs would carry him. He had almost reached his parents' room when a meaty hand shot out and clamped over his mouth, stifling his scream. The man lifted Timmy easily and carried his kicking form downstairs. The robbers were even scarier up close. They were enormous men with cruel, angular faces. The one holding Timmy gave him a shake. "Who else is in the house, kid?" Timmy just whimpered against the greasy hand. The man carrying Timmy scowled. "Search this place top to bottom," he barked. "I want to make sure we're alone." He studied Timmy with flinty eyes. "Take the kid to the basement. We'll figure out what to do with him later." Rough hands grabbed Timmy and hauled him toward the kitchen. He was unceremoniously dumped onto the basement stairs with a quiet threat. "Don't even think about making any noise." The door slammed shut behind him, and he heard the deadbolt slide closed. The unforgiving darkness enveloped him. Timmy cautiously made his way down the creaky wooden stairs until he reached the dirt floor of the basement. The tiny windows near the ceiling provided only wan illumination, but it was enough for Timmy to orient himself. Fear coursed through him. What was going to happen to his family? Would the robbers hurt them? As Timmy's eyes adjusted, he gradually made out the familiar shapes of the basement. the tool bench, the metal shelving units, the chest freezer. But unlike its normally tidy state, strange shadows seemed to dance at the edges of the room. Timmy leaned closer and glimpsed disturbing shapes and figures lurking in the darkness. He slowly walked the perimeter of the room, peering into each dark corner. Old furniture, unrecognizable under mounds of dust and cobwebs, crouched like gargoyles. A ragged teddy bear lay face down under a film of dirt, as if hiding unimaginable secrets. And was that faint, whimpering sound coming from the old steamer trunk in the farthest corner? Timmy stood in the center of the basement, trembling, his heart pounding in his ears. A noise made him whirl around. Was that the scritch-scratch of tiny claws against the concrete? The creak of old hinges? He couldn't tell where the sounds were coming from in the ink-like darkness. Then he heard voices from upstairs, guttural and harsh. Heavy boots trumped across the floor as furniture crashed. His parents. Timmy ran to the basement door and pounded his small fist against it. "Mom, Dad," he cried desperately. To his surprise, the knob turned from the other side and the door slowly swung open. Had his parents scared off the robbers? Full of hope, Timmy rushed through the door and back into the kitchen. He stopped short, rather than the cheery Christmas kitchen he loved, complete with his mother's handmade ceramics and the perpetual aroma of baked goods. The room before him was completely foreign. Rust and mildew covered every surface. Rotting remnants of food spilled out of the broken refrigerator. Windows were smashed in and an icy wind whistled through the jagged glass. Every cupboard hung open, contents smashed onto the cracked tile floor. Timmy's eyes darted wildly around the room, taking it all in with growing panic. He turned to run, but found the basement door gone. Where the entrance had been just moments before was now only a solid slab of concrete. Timmy ran from the room and found himself in the deserted remains of the house he knew so well. Wallpaper curled down in long strips to expose crumbling drywall and jagged holes. All signs of his loving family had been erased. No pictures lined the hallway. No jackets or shoes littered the entry. Just debris and decay. Timmy wanted to scream, but terror choked the sound in his throat. This couldn't be his house. What was happening? He had to find his parents. Timmy ran into the living room and skidded to a stop. Even in the darkness, he could make out the towering shape in the center of the room, enormous and misshapen. He took a hesitant step forward, eyes slowly adjusting. He blinked in surprise. It was the Christmas tree, but unlike any Christmas tree he had ever seen. It was colossal, nearly brushing the ceiling and dwarfing any tree Timmy had seen before. The huge trunk was gnarled and gray, branching out in odd places to pointed, twisted ends. But where there should have been pine needles, long crimson tendrils hung nearly to the floor, glinting wetly in the moonlight. Timmy shuddered. Why did the room smell like iron? Squinting closer, Timmy choked back a scream. Limp within the blood-red Christmas tree branches were human forms. Their pallid flesh was withered to the bone, but Timmy recognized the ratty pajamas and nightgowns. The diamond ring on one skeletal finger. These were his parents. Timmy looked wildly around, hoping this was some awful prank. But his parents' dead forms remained suspended in the macabre tree, faces stretched into unearthly silent screams. Timmy collapsed to the debris-covered floor, body racked with heaving sobs. His tears flowed messily down his cheeks until the front of his pajamas was soaked. How could this be happening? As Timmy wailed pitifully in the gloom, it seemed the shadows began to move, gathering and coalescing into a solid form more terrifying than anything Timmy had ever seen. Its towering black form nearly reached the ceiling, and two small, glowing red eyes glared down at Timmy. The large creature made its way toward him with a bizarre, shuffling gait, and Timmy scooted backward in blind panic until he hit the far wall. An unseen pressure seemed to envelop Timmy's head, bearing down like iron bands against his skull. The awful shuffling and scrape of the long, spindly creature filled his ears as it closed the gap between them. In the crimson glow reflecting off the thing's eyes, Timmy glimpsed decaying flesh stretched tight over an elongated face. Its lower jaw dangled, unhinged, as it opened its mouth impossibly wide with a scrape of bone on bone. Inside was an endless abyss that reeked of rot. Creature leaned toward Timmy, gaping maw poised over his face. Timmy squeezed his eyes shut as fetid breath washed over him. He wanted to scream, to cry, but could only manage choked whimpers. Sickly sweet. Timmy, so sweet, whispered an insidious little voice inside his head. He felt an icy fingertip trace down his cheek, leaving a searing trail like acid. The catatonic terror was broken only when Timmy felt something wet nuzzle his clenched hand. A scream was ripped from his throat as he recoiled, eyes flying open. But instead of the hideous creature from his nightmare, Timmy saw only darkness, and the cold press of his bedroom window against his palms. Weak dawn light filtered through the frosted glass. Heart still racing, Timmy looked down to see his family's old lab, Sadie, nosing worriedly at his hand dangling over the edge of the bed. The faithful dog whined softly. He was in his room, in his bed, Christmas morning sunlight beginning to chase away the shadows of the nightmare. With a sob of relief, Timmy wrapped grateful arms around Sadie's furry neck. Just a bad dream. But when Timmy descended the stairs a short while later, eager to see what Santa had brought, he couldn't keep his eyes from darting to the dark corners of each room, half expecting malevolent shapes to emerge. And when the smell of his mother's Christmas ham reached his nose, he choked down a surge of panic. To Timmy, the scent seemed tinged with the iron tang of blood. Timmy stumbled backwards, heart racing, as the clawed red hand swiped the air in front of him. The glowing red eyes advanced from the darkness by the Christmas tree, and Timmy turned to run back down the hallway. He had barely made it a few feet when he bumped straight into a tall figure. Stifling a scream, Timmy looked up to see it was his dad, holding a baseball bat. "Timmy, what are you doing out of bed?" his dad asked. "There's something by the Christmas tree," Timmy shouted. "I saw something scary with red eyes." His dad's brow furrowed as he stepped forwards towards the family room. "Stay back, Timmy," he instructed. Gripping the bat tightly, Timmy's dad flipped the light switch on. As the lights sparked to life on the Christmas tree, he surveyed the room, bat poised to strike. Nothing seemed amiss. I don't understand," stammered Timmy from the hallway, his nightmare feeling suddenly silly in the warm glow of the lights. "There was something here." "Must have been a bad dream, kiddo," his dad replied, lowering the bat. Then his eyes caught on something under the tree. "Wait a minute, what's that?" He knelt down and pulled out a stuffed Grinch doll with bright red LED eyes. As he pressed its hand, the eyes flashed on, casting an eerie red glow around the room. Timmy gasped. "Looks like someone left this here to give you quite the scare," Dad said with a chuckle. But Timmy couldn't shake the chilling feeling that this was more than just a prank. Someone or something had been by their Christmas tree, and whatever it was, he felt like they hadn't seen the last of it.